I'd like to take a moment before we begin to commend our superintendents, our principals, our teachers, our nurses, our bus drivers, our custodial staff, our aides, and our students. Amidst so much change and uncertainty, everyone at Rolla Public Schools has been flexible, helpful, and problem-solving. The Board of Education, all of us, are deeply grateful and totally impressed. I believe we're at a point when the what-ifs of last week are now what is and what's next. Thank you for bearing with us. We want to continue teaching our students and serving this community, even if it is logistically challenging. I have two asks of everyone. Number one, please comply with the guidelines limiting contact and practicing what's recently been added to Webster's Dictionary, social distancing. And number two, please practice kindness, be quick to forgive, encourage, and support each other. Someday, when we look back, I hope we remember how the people in Rolla thrived and how our schools adapted to the new methods of delivering instruction. And while our doors may be closed right now, teaching time is not over. So, we will start with our questions from the floor. At this time, any person wishing to speak on questions previously discussed through administrative channels, sorry, try to read it quickly, and not on the agenda will be granted 5 minutes to make a presentation to the board. Please state your name for the record. And seeing no one, we'll move on to presentations on agenda items. Any person wishing to speak on any items on the agenda will be granted 5 minutes to make a presentation. And seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. A consent agenda is utilized by the Rolla Board of Education as a means of dealing with routine matters which must be considered by the Board of Education but require a minimum of discussion. All Board of Education members receive and review written information supporting the items listed in the consent agenda well in advance of the meeting, while any Board of Education member is welcome to remove any item from the consent agenda for separate consideration or discussion for any reason. Normally, all items in the consent agenda are approved in one motion with a minimum of discussion. I'm looking for a motion to approve items A through F.
And just as a point of order, Tony, Shannon, and Jane, you can vote on these electronically.
Okay.
Did you hear that, Jane?
Well, I didn't hear it clearly.
You are allowed to vote on these items in open session if you would like to.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, I need a motion for approving items A through F.
I'll make the motion.
Thanks, Carla.
I'll second. Oh, I got
seconded
second
it.
over the phone.
Tony got a
All right.
second in. Woohoo!
Well done, sir.
Should we, since we have some on the phone, do a roll call vote, or are
Oh.
we okay? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Okay, going down to new business. A BSN proposal for athletic uniforms and equipment.
This is the night for Dr. Dare. He's got a lot on the agenda tonight.
Why are you so far away?
I don't know, but we're going to fix it.
I mean,
Social
I'm
distancing,
good with the bubble,
Madam
but
Chair.
that's ridiculous.
We had it out in the parking lot earlier.
That's right. You have no idea how much you're going to hear from me here. So. All right, let me make sure this thing is on. Ooh. Okay. All right. Walk you through this, and please feel free to ask questions at any time. This is a little different than maybe normal routine things. What we're proposing to you tonight or what we're presenting to you tonight is a proposal from BSN Sports through their partnership with Under Armour. It's kind of a rewards program is the best way to describe it. But I'll walk you all the way through this, and then we can visit any questions you may have. So this is a purchasing agreement between RPS and BSN Sports, specifically for Under Armour products for team apparel, BSN team shops. All orders from BSN would apply, and just make sure everybody understands, BSN did buy out Key Sports, so they are pretty much our local vendor for a lot of these types of things at this point. This agreement would be kind of an exclusive agreement. However, there are provisions in that we can go outside of the agreement when necessary. So there are things that Under Armour does not do. So we would not be obligated to, obviously we would be free to do what we would need to do there. make sure I'm saying that right. All orders from BSN apply, so kind of clarify for you, the team stores that are set up where parents buy or fans buy, alumni purchase t-shirts, any of those things, all of those things apply to this program. So it's not just the items purchased by the school district. There's 3 areas of benefit to RPS, and we'll talk through each one of these. Discounts up front, rebates, and then there are some upfront product rebates through the Under Armour set. So on the discounts, first of all, just there's an ease of ordering involved with this in that we would know what these are up front. And so when we're doing these smaller item amounts, and we'll talk about this here in a minute, our board policy generally requires us to look at pricing from multiple sources. We would know what these discounts are up front, and we can use that in our comparisons. So for Under Armour team apparel, it's a 40% discount off the catalog pricing. For team footwear, it's 35%. For all BSN products, 20%. And then BSN catalog branded products, so that's where it gets into the other products like Nike, Rawlings, Adidas, those types of things. There's a 10% discount. For the annual rebates, it's based on our spending through BSN. For all Under Armour apparel, for any other branded apparel, and for any BSN products. So basically all purchases through BSN. If we spend $100,000 or more collectively, that's not the district, that's through all those other mediums, there's a 10% rebate, 8% if it's in that range, 6% if it's below $75,000. That's redeemed in May or June of each year, so we're able to use that in preparation for the upcoming year. And that is just a credit held at BSN. So it's not a cash rebate, it's credit to spend through BSN. Just so you have an idea, we have already surpassed the 100,000 mark for this year, just at the high school alone. And this would apply to all buildings.
Do we buy all Under Armour now?
We have 3 teams that are not Under Armour currently, and there's no requirement that we change those until we're ready to. And those 3 teams are currently both basketball teams, varsity basketball teams, and the track uniforms, I believe, are not Under Armour.
So when you're talking about those team stores that they have set up, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
or state T-shirts or whatever the thing is, the support gear,
Right.
that's all.
That's
also
all also
Under Armour?
included, yes.
Do we have the option of using something else still with BSN?
There
If we
is.
go something different?
So there are options within, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Curious.
there are options. And there's no requirement, you know, it's still up to our coaches, and we talked through this specifically. Sometimes students need specific shoes, for example. So even when we set team shoes, we don't require typically every kid to go with that shoe. So if a kid needs to go outside of that, that's okay. There's no problems there.
So if we wanted, let's say, a real inexpensive T-shirt and it's not in the Under Armour line, but maybe it's in some other line.
The BSN products.
BSN could
Bad
still
like that.
Yeah,
post-
correct.
Could still
Yeah.
sell that to us.
The only place that we're kind of obligating ourselves to look at primarily Under Armour are team uniforms.
Uniforms, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the credit that you were talking about a while ago, would that be reflected in the bid?
So we would just know that as we're going in, that we have the discounts, let me back up. The discounts are up front, so we would know that when we're bidding things. The rebates are just at the end of the year, if we've surpassed that, we get 10% of whatever we spent back in credit. So that part would not be reflected in the bid.
Now, you mentioned bids, but they would be our exclusive apparel provider, so technically,
We're still free to compare,
All right.
but with those discounts,
gotcha.
it's going to be difficult for
Okay.
competition.
So the purchasing agreement doesn't lock us into,
Nope, and I'll talk about that here in a second too. The product rebate, each year the district receives, $15,000 in product the first year, $12,000 for each year, and in years 2 through 5. This is straight from Under Armour and is for Under Armour product only. And that can be used for whatever we determine. If we want to apply that to a team uniform purchase, or it can be used for Under Armour products for marketing or any of those kind of things. So that's free for us to do. Additionally, they will provide us, we would become an Under Armour school, essentially. And so you've probably seen this sometimes at the collegiate level. This is kind of a new program for high schools, but it is spreading across the nation. So they will provide us with media backdrops, tablecloths, pop-up tents, banners, coolers, those kind of things at no cost. They just want the marketing. That's the trade-off to Under Armour. They want to market to our students, obviously. So the terms, it is a 5-year term. We do have the option to renew or cancel each year, and we can terminate this at any time with a 90-day notice. So we're not locked into anything. It seemed very flexible. I think this is just their attempt to help us out, to be quite honest. And again, I mentioned that board policy, and that's kind of small, but basically, all of these are going to fall in that lower tier of bidding, so we just do comparative pricing. We don't do formal bid processes under $2,500. So an individual uniform and individual items are not going to meet that threshold. So it allows us to compare those. If we do find someone who can beat the pricing, we are still allowed to do that per our policies. So our recommendation, after we've talked through this, and we did call some reference schools in the St. Louis and Kansas City areas, but our recommendation would be to give this a go.
And we've been happy so far with their products.
Yes. And I think you could talk to any individual kid or any individual player or coach at any time and get a review of any product, but all in all, yeah, they're quality products.
Any other questions for Dr. Dare or discussion?
Oh, hang on just a
I'm
second,
glad-
Jane. Hang on just a second.
Okay.
Tony's talking. Hang on.
Okay, I'm fine.
So the 5-year commitment is just kind of an upfront commitment so that they know that we're serious about staying with it. We can cancel at any time with the 90 days. For the rebates and those things to apply, it's an annual renewal. I don't know if that helps, Tony, but there are layers in that agreement, but it pretty much gives us the freedom to do what we need to do. But if we cancel in 90 days, obviously they're not going to give us the rebates and some of those things.
Right. Yeah, makes sense, thank you.
Okay, Jane,
Yep,
did you
good
have
question.
a comment?
No, I was just gonna say, I like the idea that we can look at it annually and that we can do that in 90 days.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of like it's a win-win for us to go into this partnership.
And they understand that we still would have a bid process. They know that it's not.
Yes, they're confident they're going to win it anyway, so.
We can break.
Okay. Any further discussion? Do I have a motion to accept the BSN proposal?
I'll make a motion, we accept the BSN proposal.
Thanks, Brian.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Jim. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We're on to the FY 2021 staffing, proposed new certificated staffing positions.
Just a little bit of an introduction as we put the presentation up. We've been talking with the directors, all but technology, activities, and buildings and grounds. So kind of been sharing with you the staffing needs for next year as we start to build the expenditure side of the budget. And so we've been keeping that running tally. So in order for us to recruit some of these folks that we don't see coming off of the budget list, Dr. Dare is going to present to you. And what we really would like to do is be able to move forward to start staffing accordingly. So
as Dr. Zala said, I'd like to just kind of start and just talk high-level process, but as he was mentioning, we've been through these meetings with the building principals and talked through their situations and their changes in their buildings with staff and their needs. We do almost a constant analysis of our enrollment trends. Mr. Hounsome keeps that spreadsheet updated and shares with all of us. Our district and building level improvement plans, of course, play a role in this. And last but certainly not least is just the needs of our students. We want to make sure we're meeting their needs in the end. So this is a list of the staff we're proposing to you this evening, and I'll talk through these just real quickly. We have had a request and looked closely at the addition of a third school resource officer. There's just a lot going on in the world, and we're very appreciative of the school resource officers we have. and the relationships that they build with our students, and would like to help them out as well, because we do stretch them thin sometimes. So we appreciate the work that they do. Junior high wrestling, that's something we talked briefly about in the past, but we think it's time to start with that program. So looking at the stipends for a head coach and an assistant coach. A middle school counselor. Currently, the middle school has the highest counselor to student ratio. Kids have changed a little bit, so middle school is kind of the starting to be a hotbed for the need for mental and physical health instruction and additional resources there. So we feel like this would be a good way to help fill in those gaps and provide some additional resources there. We've talked in the past briefly about an additional band director. I think our primary concern there is the safety and well-being of our students. When they travel in the fall especially, there's over 200 students involved there, and currently with the director and assistant director that we have, we'd just like to improve that ratio, and then also with our beginning band students, give them a better start. The Learning Center aid, our Learning Center, just in case you're not aware, we serve high school students who are at risk of dropping out through multiple programs and credit recovery programs. It's also our alternative suspension program where students can go and still work and get credit for their work. We've made some personnel changes there, and that program is functioning very well. The retention and attendance of students has grown throughout the year. We have several students that we feel like we could reach out to get maybe back into school that have dropped out, and additional students that are at danger of dropping out. So the addition of an aide there would help us with that higher student population. Dr. Reed has done an analysis of the current student population that we have coming out of early childhood and moving through the buildings. And so she has, to maintain our caseload requirements, she is proposing 3 additional special education teachers, 4 additional special education paraprofessionals, and 1 nurse. And the nurse is currently working with students but would move programming, so it would shift some things. Some of those expenditures could be covered through federal Part B funds, IDEA Part B funds, and some of that through a little bit of cooperation with ECSE still. So there are some offsets to some of that budgetarily, but that will be determined by student populations next year. Talk just briefly about some physical space needs. Anytime we're talking about adding staff, we have to think about where we're putting them. Space needs are different in each building, but there is some potential for some immediate needs based on this additional special education teachers. So one thing we have been considering, I did go with Dr. Herman and Laura Brown and Ruth Diaz, our early childhood careers teacher. We went and visited some programs where they have early childhood classrooms in close proximity to their early childhood careers program as a lab, essentially. One of the things we have talked about doing is taking the one early childhood program class from each of the elementaries and bringing them here to RTC to serve as lab spaces for that child careers program. That would free up some classroom spaces at the elementaries, particularly at Wyman and Truman. We are a little cramped right now with the addition of, if we're looking at that addition of those staff. There are some things we'd have to talk through. So one example was restrooms. We would have to designate one of the restrooms here in the building as an early childhood restroom only. We think we can work that out. We've got some plans in place to do that. So not asking you to make a decision on that part tonight, but just know that we are looking at those particular details. And that, I think, is the only place that we feel like we have some issues to overcome. Other things, just as a kind of a touching point, we've explored additional staffings for the junior high for English and science, and as well as some other areas. This kind of goes back to that enrollment process. We review this on a constant basis and will continue to through the end of the school year and into early next year. At this time, we anticipate the ability to shift some FTE, some teaching positions, so that we are not adding staff necessarily. Now that's all subject to change as our enrollment shifts and those things happen. But at this point, that's a normal process. We do that every year. And so just know that there are other positions and other things that we are considering through this, but we feel like they would not have to be additional teachers, physical teachers.
Dr. Dare, would you speak to, unique job description we had envisioned for the third counselor at the middle school.
Sure.
Particularly regarding health instruction.
Sure. So I kind of mentioned that briefly, and thank you, Dr. Zalas. I'll go back on that. One of the things that we've noticed the need for is additional health instruction, and that's mental and physical at the middle school. Those kids are going through things that at an earlier age than perhaps in the past, and we would task the counselors there with the addition of the counselor to address those needs within the classroom with every kid. So through their group counseling programs and that, we would want them to address those health needs. That's one piece of that. In addition to just the additional resource person there for small group and individual counseling. This is just a summary. It's those same positions with estimated costs. And usually when we estimate for positions, we tend to go to the middle of the salary schedule, both in years of experience and in education pieces for our certified staff. And then for the support staff, we tend to look at the highest level they could possibly start at, and we start there. So just to give you an idea of what we're talking about.
So Kyle, these full-time positions, especially in special ed, maybe I didn't hear it correctly. Do we have people working in the building doing that right now, and we're contracting them, or?
For the special education
Yes.
pieces. So we obviously have people doing those now.
Right.
These would be additional spots to address additional.
got
Maybe not so much additional students, Dr. Creedy, but additional student needs. So some of our student population is going to be up a little, but some of the severity is changing, which drives the time needed by those teachers.
And again, both those costs may be
Right. Those are completely estimates, and they're kind of middle of the road. So they could be a little higher, could be a little lower. Most likely be a little lower.
and then we still have the funding to help with those.
We have some Part B IDEA. For instance, we think we can cover that the paraprofessionals completely with those funds. Part of the nurse could be covered with ECSE funds. Can't give you a good number on that because we just don't know yet exactly.
So what we're seeking is the approval of the ability to move forward with the staffing plan, knowing that it'll come in increments as we begin to recruit, and knowing also you'll be accepting resignations of some people, and some of this happens through attrition, that we may not replace people, they go somewhere else. But
Right.
in order for Dr. Dare and the principals and supervisors to get on the recruiting part of that, we need to move forward.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Any other discussion or questions for Dr. Dare?
Just needs are needs. We have an unknown as far as our budget, but we have a balance, and that's what the balance is for. So
Yeah, I can't reiterate enough. Probably the principals will be glad I won't reiterate it anymore. That we can do anything you want to do, but you got to start telling us what we're not going to do to replace those things over time. So you can commit to it now. We haven't got all the other pieces, but this is earlier than we usually talk with you about this. We're just kind of sharing with you what we're forecasting. So it's a little bit different methodology than years past.
So do you need an action from us?
Yeah,
We would
You do.
appreciate that.
I'll make the motion that we approve the positions as presented by Dr. Dare.
And I'll second.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Carla. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Shannon, are you still there? Okay.
Dr. Dare, I just have one request.
Sure.
Would you mind that page right there? Would you mind sending that to the board? Just
Can do that?
the one with all those numbers, final numbers
Absolutely.
on it?
You
You may already have
I
that.
think you guys have this presentation too, correct?
Oh, just,
Oh,
We'll get it to all of you.
we'll
Okay.
get to the rest.
I don't need the whole thing. I think that
Be
last
easier for us
page
just to
is
send it to the rest of us.
Yeah.
We'll get you.
perfect.
Yeah, we sent it to our absentee members here so they could see it while we're
Remote.
going along.
They're not.
Remote,
Remote.
yes. Very good. Okay, thank you. I'm guessing that you're going to talk about the next thing, too.
You get to hear all from me.
Bus bids for transportation. Those are in the back of your packet if you need to look at those.
Yes, you should have about 4 pages, 3 or 4 pages in the back of your packet there if you want to look through those. I'll talk you through this real quickly. So this is our normal bid process. We did have money in the budget set aside this year for school bus replacement. That's part of our normal cycle. So just a little bit about the process. We do send bid specifications out. We try to leave those open enough that any company can participate, but yet specific enough to meet the needs of our programs. And there are just certain things that we require to make sure that our mechanics can keep them on the road and keep them safe. We did send that out to multiple companies. We received one bid by the deadline. We did receive one bid after the deadline, but it would not have been the best bid anyway. And that's the words of the vendor, not mine. So Midwest Transit is the bid that we received. So what you have in front of you is a proposal for 2 64-passenger buses that are wheelchair lift equipped so that they can be used for special needs, physically disabled students. The cost of those is $103,525 each, as well as a bid for 4 72-passenger, I'll just use the term regular school buses, traditional school buses. Cost of $91,938 each, total of $574,802. We did plan to purchase 5 buses in FY20. We did have one bus that was totaled by our insurance company due to an accident in November. And just want to mention, it doesn't take much for the insurance company to total a bus. We don't risk, and we don't want them to risk putting a bus back on the road that's potentially not safe. So it's a good thing and it's fine. We also have the EPA bus grant that I presented to you on last time or the time before. So I'll talk you through all this and how this all plays together. If you look at this budget impact page, so our budget amount for this year for FY20 for the 5 buses was $450,000. The EPA grant will award us an additional $100,000, so that brings our total to $550,000. The insurance payout for the bus that we lost in November was $20,667, which brings our total to $570,667. So if you take the total cost of the 6 replacement buses, the 5 that were budgeted plus 1 to replace the one that was totaled, you'll see that we're able to address those needs for the wheelchair equipped buses and the extra cost for that. And we're just $4,135 over budget at this point. So we would request your permission to proceed. We did get our final approval letter from the EPA. You have a copy of that in the back of your packet there. So we got that on the 16th. So it's fresh and hot off the presses, but we have been allocated that $100,000. So there should be no issues there. We will have to demo 5 buses to receive that grant. So the 6th, remember, has already been demoed. So it was total.
We can't send them that one?
Can't send them that one.
Okay, any further discussion or questions for Dr. Dare? Do we have a motion to approve the school bus purchase for FY20?
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Tony.
I'll second.
Thanks, Brian. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Board of Education future meeting dates are listed there, April 2nd, April 16th, May 7th.
We
What?
need to talk about June, just as a heads up. Because of the municipal election movement to June from April, it impacts when the board can reorganize. So,
June 11th?
well, is that what we agreed upon?
Well, that's,
It'll be certified on the 5th at noon, and the 11th is the next week. We have to have a meeting by the 16th.
Okay.
So yes, the 11th.
and then our last meeting will be the June 30th morning meeting for
So we need to have an action on May 7th, June 11th, and June 30th?
May's already set.
It's already set? Okay.
And then June 11th and June 30th. Do we have a motion to approve those meeting dates?
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Carla.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Jim.
Should we
all-
move Mrs. Haskell's appreciation reception to June 11th?
Yeah.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
She can hear
I,
us.
did she say yes?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
I just approved it, Jane. If you're not here, I guess they're gonna appreciate you anyway.
Here, but, so what date then would be my last board meeting?
June 11th would be.
June 11th?
Yeah, and that's when we would like to move the celebration of your service to that date as well.
Okay, I knew that they, that they just set different dates on all the election and everything. And did you guys just get the message that all state testing's canceled?
Don't be stealing my thunder.
Oh, it just came through on my iPad as I was watching you guys. All right.
We'll talk about that here in a second, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, old business. You again? Okay, old business, R31, 2020.
So we're going to break from the tradition of showing you the presentation again. Yeah, we've had some questions.
We actually get to add a few to it.
Yeah,
So
we're
we're
gonna add
not
to
walking
it.
away from the bond issue,
No.
but it is inappropriate to talk about it now, but we are in the context of safety, so.
We've had questions as we've gone through and you know, maybe just the need to talk a little bit about what we do with safety and security on a normal basis and a regular basis and how that relates to what we're talking about with the bond issue. So Mr. Fridley was going to come tonight and present to you. We excused him tonight in the effort to control the crowd a little bit and so you're stuck with me again. But I'll do my best to walk you through this. This is a very broad level, and I would want to start with that by saying we do not share details of our safety and security plans with the community. That's protected by state law, and with good reason. We don't want people trying to navigate around those things. They're there for us to deal with and for us to know about, and we do communicate them with our staff and the people that need to know. But we do not share the very detailed plans with the general public. So this is a high-level view, but certainly if you have questions, please feel free to throw them out, and I'll do my best to answer them as we move through this. So first and foremost, in our district, the key to all of our safety and security measures are relationships. And we want our students to feel comfortable with their teachers, administrators, counselors, support staff, whoever they're coming in contact with. And our SROs do a great job with this too. But we want them to feel comfortable. It's that whole see something, say something mentality. We want them to be sharing things with us because the kids know things that we quite honestly don't know. And so they're a key component of this, and we want those positive relationships so everyone feels safe and comfortable in doing that. It's not the same as tattling. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about knowing enough to share and feeling comfortable enough to share those issues. So safety in our district, we take the approach that it's ever evolving and comprehensive. So we do try to be proactive. Obviously, that's not always possible. This current COVID-19 situation is one good example. I mean, we didn't predict this. There was no way to know what was coming. So, but we do try to be proactive, and we try to have plans in place that are both rigid enough and set enough that everyone knows what to do in the event of an incident, but also flexible enough that everyone can react to the incident itself, because no security or safety issue is ever going to be the same. We do engage with experts. Mr. Fridley has gone to several trainings this year. I've sat in on a few of those. I know our SROs are in constant training. Our nurses, our staff go through constant hours of training throughout the year in different forms and fashions. And we engage with our experts and our people that help us guide us with these new and ever-changing ideas and thoughts. We do listen and try to respond to our stakeholders. That's not always possible. We do try to take into account their requests and needs. I always use the example, last year we had a grandmother who really did not want to be bothered with checking in the office. She's quite safe, and she knows that she's safe, and But we just explained to her that we have to do that. That's just the changing world that we live in. And she was fine. So we're not always able to meet them at their needs, but we do try to take into account their opinions. Obviously, we have board policies that deal with safety and security and regulations from DESE. They do share some things with us. Department of Homeland Security has taken a much greater role in school safety and security over the last few years with obvious reasons. MSBA is a great partner for us. They kind of partner with the Missouri School Safety Network, and it's a great resource. We get weekly updates from them with articles, journals, guideline revisions, policy revisions, those kind of things. So Mr. Fridley and I are both active in that group and try to stay on top of those pieces. Safety and security for the Rolla District kind of falls into these three prongs: personnel, procedures, and facilities. And we've talked with the bond issue about the facility piece, and we'll come back to that one. But there are personnel and procedure things that fit within the bond, fit within our facility needs, and it's also interrelated. So nothing stands alone, and that's what we'll talk through here. On the personnel side, obviously, it involves everybody. And there's no other way to say that. Everyone is involved. And, we talk about, in some of our staff meetings, we've had people list things, and sometimes they forget people like our crossing guards. They're a very important part of our safety and security. They're out there every day in probably one of the more dangerous positions if you've seen people drive. So we appreciate them and the relationship we have with our first responders here in town, the police department, fire department, EMT, everyone. And the staff that they provide to us. There's nothing better than sitting down with them, and we do that periodically, but sitting down with them and just having open and honest conversations about what's happening in the world and what we can do better and what we can provide for them. They are in our buildings frequently. They do come in to train. We have floor plans with all of our first responders, so they know our facilities well, and we want that relationship, and we want them to be a part of that process. But the main thing to know is personnel involves everybody, and we do train with everyone and require everyone to be a part of that process. For our procedures, we have a lot of procedures. There's no doubt about that. Everyone in the district has a crisis manual. What we try to tell them is the first thing that you're going to do in a crisis is not grab that manual, because every crisis.
He's looking for one.
He's coming.
That's our new mic.
Wow. Could be some truth there.
I wonder why I went over to it.
The microphone went dead and put a new battery in it. If you want to know why we went quiet.
Too much, I apologize. Okay, and we got fresh batteries. We can go forever now. Everybody has a crisis manual, but what we tell them is those are our first line of plans, and every situation is different. So we expect them to be familiar with those processes and procedures, but we also expect them to react to the situation and protect our students. We do numerous drills throughout the year with our students, with our staff, with our teams, and some of those are with students, some of those are without students, and there's reasoning in that as well. We do bus safety drills. So we evacuate our buses and practice that process. Those are all very important. Our crisis intervention training is a big piece. We do that annually with a select group of people who are take it to a higher level. All of our staff are required to do annual training that's provided to us through Music, our insurance company. And those involve suicide training, bullying prevention, sexual harassment, child abuse, signs and symptoms of those. Everyone is required to do those and sign off on those every year. And we stress that. That's a big thing. We do that at the beginning of every year. Our bus drivers go through additional trainings as well for securing the buses and those kind of things and situations and circumstances. A large percentage of our staff are CPR and AED trained. We're adding first aid training to some of those. The majority of our coaching, well, all of our coaching staff is trained in that, and numerous teachers throughout each building. Courage to Report is a program that the state started last year. It's a anonymous. It doesn't have to be, but it can be anonymous reporting of school violence and bullying issues. So that information is on our website. There's 800 numbers and websites people can go to report. Those reports go directly to the administrator within the building and the SROs. So as soon as those are filed, even if it's 3 a.m., those go directly to you. And I can tell you, we've had a few of those that we've responded to before school has ever even gotten started and walked through. So we do take those very seriously, and that is a part of our process. Each building has a crisis team, and as a district, we have a crisis team, again, at a little higher level of training than everyone goes through. Our insurance company comes in annually and does reviews with us. Looks at everything from our playgrounds to make sure the nuts and bolts are tight, all the way through our exit signs, our fire extinguishers, our pathways through the buildings, anything you can think of. They come in and review and give us guidance and direction on what we should improve and things we're doing well. And then the last thing I would mention here with procedures is background checks, and that's becoming more and more of an important piece. But we do background check all employees, no matter what their position in the district is, including substitutes, get a full background check. That's a fingerprint background check that goes through the state highway patrol system, checks the FBI records for the nation, and also adds to it the child abuse check. So everyone that works on campus does that. We also do background checks for our volunteers that are in the building regularly to make sure that they're not on the child abuse registry as well. As we get into the facilities piece, again, part of this ties into the bond issue, but there are a lot of things we take into account with this. And so even just traffic flow, I think is probably one of the best examples. We look at our traffic flow patterns and we try to address those and make sure that primarily our goal there is to make sure that kids are not having to cross major traffic areas or being put in danger where they're crossing in front of or between cars or buses. That's our goal. Testing of our emergency systems, we do that periodically as well, typically when people are not in the buildings. They're loud and very, very difficult to ignore. We do use our systems when we have drills, but we also test them periodically outside of the drills. Our fire extinguishers are inspected regularly by an outside company to make sure they're up to date and current. So as we get into the bond issue and we're talking about our entryways and securing those doors and those kind of pieces, those pieces fit into these bigger procedures and processes and trainings that we've done. And so they're standalone in the fact that they're paid for by the bond issue, but they're not standalone in the fact that they're tied to our bigger plans. And so we on a daily basis talk about safety and security, and we move through these processes and we make adjustments and we change things, but always with the end result of wanting our students to be safe. So we talked earlier and appreciate your discussion about the additional SRO. We've talked about the Alertus integration, and I think that's going to be a real powerful tool for us. Rob and I are really close to that. Rob Wood, with our network administrator, has done an amazing job of setting that up. There's a lot of work that goes in the background because every individual computer on campus has to be set up in a tree of some sort to know who's notifying and when it gets notified. So he's done a lot of work with that, and we're getting very close to having that set up to go district-wide. And then some of those other pieces that we talked about with the bond issue, taking that background check to the next level where it's instant, where we're not waiting for a few days for those results, where we can check people as soon as they're coming into the building. Things change. And so we want to stay current and be on top of those processes. And then the ability to do those alerts from multiple places. So that's a powerful tool that these systems would bring us through the bond issue. So with that, I would ask if there's any questions or anything. I know that I went through that pretty quickly, and it's a very broad level, but just mainly want everybody to know that it's something we take very seriously and we live with every day. It's never a side conversation. It's embedded in everything we do.
Thank you, Dr. Dare. Anyone have any questions or discussion regarding the safety and security procedures?
I think you're just tired of hearing me talk.
Well,
I thought we'd take some time during this too. Dr. Dare mentioned, the COVID-19 as part of safety, how you respond, and maybe even Dr. Creedy kind of talk through that too. On Sunday, when things started happening, what you saw across the state was a number of superintendents who started talking with each other, and you started watching. And if you're watching any of the movement that's happening, you well know that the ability to address our community with regard to school closures was remanded back to local control, which meant that as an administrative team or superintendent, we're having to make the decision based upon the knowledge that we have. And so while we're not health experts, you kind of go into that, what are you going to do mode. So pretty early on Sunday, there was a significant group that represents most of Southwest Missouri up to us, and I had one in the group from St. Louis that were trying to figure out what exactly where we were headed. So obviously we all, by today, it went from 100 schools to 300 schools to today 555, and that counts all public and charter schools all being closed. Just didn't all happen at once. And so we, as an administrative team, had to figure out, A, how long was it going to be, and B, what can we do to maintain services? Because what is readily apparent now that schools are inextricably linked to their communities and are much more than just a place to learn, So I find it interesting that a lot of everybody's feeding at some capacity. So I first wanted to commend Dr. Dare and Mr. Hounsome, because they led the other prongs of that charge after we decided we were going to have to figure out continuity of meal services and how can we keep our people employed during this time. And then what are we going to do for learning? Because you can't, in 72 hours, create a whole new learning platform that replaces the relationship with a teacher in the classroom. It just doesn't happen. And it's not perfect, and we've never done it. So I thought if everybody pays attention to School Messenger, we, through that, have blasted out our plans and pointed each individual parent to the school that their children go to, because the teachers were working up until yesterday creating learning plans, flexible learning plans that we'll let Mr. Hounsome talk about. So we wanted people to know that next week our offices are closed. We've sent everybody out of here. There's no custodians, and nothing's happening in our building during spring break. And so if they come up here and they can't, we got a sign on the door that says we're closed. So that's all 12-monthers. And then the plan for learning that Mr. Hounsome will kind of speak to begins on the 30th and runs through the 3rd. And we're only doing this a week at a time because we don't know how long, and things seem to change every hour and have changed today with regard to the local state of emergency in our county. So, and then the feeding, the neat thing about that is it seems that we're rekindling a relationship with the faith-based community to try to get food out to kids in a variety of ways. So the backpack program is on our notification that was sent out, and they're feeding today, and tomorrow there is information there. And then also with regard to the food bank that the Hagnais through the church, their coordinated efforts in that too. So we're willing to work with more and expand that. I hope that becomes a model that can carry on further after this is over. So with that, I wanted Mr. Hounsome to kind of talk about the learning plan, and Dr. Dare to talk about the food service side of it, and then we'd answer any questions anybody has.
So for the Tuesday and Wednesday this week, all the teachers in the district, we're working to create 5-day learning plans for each grade level, K-6, and each subject area, 7-12. And the goal was to put resources in the hands of parents and students so that during the time that we were gone, they could have some learning experiences at home and maybe some worthwhile use of their time. And speaking as a parent of 3 kids in the district, we will be seeking worthwhile uses of time by March 30 through April 3rd, because we are struggling already. But again, the idea was not to send home a big packet full of worksheets and multiplication things for them to do, but instead to give them some activities that parents and students can do together, and some family activities with options available. Obviously, we live in a world filled with technology, and we use a lot of technology in the district. And so there are technology items in the learning plan, but also we ask that all teachers provide options for those families who access to devices and internet connections is not there or easy to get. So we've tried to create flexible plans. The schools will be reaching out to each parent and distributing those. We are right now considering ourselves on spring break, so that work will be going to parents and students toward the end of next week, as school would have been scheduled to get going on March 30th. We will send all of that out. There are some schools perhaps where parents will need to get maybe some packets to them, so schools have worked out some distribution plans on how parents can get those and pick them up. And we hope that when they get them, again, that it's just a way to kind of reconnect them to school during that time and do some neat things. I give a lot of credit to our teachers because we ask them to be creative, and we ask them to find creative ways to do things at home. And in looking at the plans, there's a lot of really creative ideas and ways that kids can re-engage. So that's our 5-day plan. We are still hopeful to be back in school on Monday, April 6th. Obviously, the situation changes daily. Should there arise a need to go further, then we will push out a plan to extend learning for longer. Commissioner Jane mentioned earlier that just this evening before we walked into the meeting, Commissioner Van Dieven sent out a message that state map testing has been canceled for this spring. So we're starting to see some of those things. So Dr. Zales mentioned, converting changing over to a fully remote teaching institution. It's taking a lot of working together, and I want to say I appreciate greatly the work of the principals and the teachers in coming together to do this. This is not what we're built to do, and they did a really good job, and I think came up with some really nice stuff. So we will continue to communicate with you and with the full community on our plans for re-engaging here at some point. So that's kind of where we are.
DESE has maintained that our funding is going to remain intact, so that's why we've kept all of our staff employed. They're on paid administrative leave right now. And when we come back on the 30th, if we come back, on that week of the 30th through the 3rd is when the part-time staff become whole, because they would have not worked during spring break anyway. Right. So there's different pieces to our employment base, but we thought it was important to not place them in a situation where they were thinking they had to work. We just took over that and made that decision yesterday. But just received another memorandum today from DESE that our funding is intact, and we're receiving, they'll figure out the calculation on ADA. I think things that are on the minds of most school districts now, we had 2 in the St. Louis area, Warrenton and Wright City, who made the decision last night to cancel for the remainder of the year, with graduation moving to the end of May. We haven't talked much about graduation or prom. I think prom, we'll have to figure out how to do a private prom, but it's killed a lot of things, so we'll figure that out as we go. And Dr. Dare, if you want to talk about feeding kids.
Yeah, so I'd start by saying, as we think about how we're going to feed kids, obviously it looks different when we can't put them all in one room and feed them. And so it's been fascinating and amazing to see the number of people who have volunteered to help in whatever capacity they can, not only from our staff, our kitchen staff, but our bus drivers, our teachers, our aides, secretaries, and then outside our staff to the community members who volunteered to help in any way they can, whether it be through sites that we can distribute from or whatever the case may be. So I would encourage everyone, the details for all this will be on the website. We are pushing it out. We pushed out a thing today. We'll continue to push that out as it changes and evolves. But the details will be on the website for anyone. We are planning to feed any kid under the age of 18. So we have permission from the state to do that, and that is our plan. Our plans currently are for service on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We'll have pickup locations at Truman, Wyman, and the junior high. People can drive through. We'll bring the food out to your car. Right now, under the guidelines, because it is a federal funded program, the child does have to be present to get the meals. But our plans at this time, we will give them 2 lunches and 2 breakfasts. So when they come on Monday, they'll get 2 breakfasts and 2 lunches. And that should carry them through to the Wednesday pickup. We're also going to run some buses and try to get out into our rural areas. So right now we have stops planned at the Vichy Road intersection, at Kokomo Joe's, at the VFW Hall on South 63, at the Shriners Hall on 72, and at Academy Sports. We have had offers from others in the community, various churches and places. We may expand that. There's some logistics involved in that, and quite honestly, we may have to figure out how Monday goes. We don't know how many to expect or how that process will go. So we'll learn. I'm sure we'll make some mistakes, but we will do our best to make sure every kid gets food. That's our goal. So please check the website periodically, because I'm sure that will all shift as we move forward.
Dr. Dare, what were those 3 schools again where they could pick up?
Truman, Wyman, and the junior high.
Okay.
So we're trying to hit each area, so if kids can walk, trying to get them in a location they can get to walk also.
So RD, I think the focus received our blast that we sent out on the feeding and the graphic that goes with that too. So
And then the other thing I might mention, Gina has stepped up and on our news page on the main Rolla website, we are trying to link any community resources as well. So the things like the backpack program and the food pickups at the community centers and churches. If anyone has information like that they'd like to share, we'd be happy to put that information out for everyone and try to keep that as kind of a central database.
been a weird week.
It's been a strange.
Been interesting, yeah.
Did you have anything you wanted to add, Dr. Creedy? Just want to give you a chance. You certainly don't have to. I know you're kind of in the trenches.
Yeah, it's, like I said, really difficult times for everyone. And like I said, the surprising thing, and Dr. Zales mentioned it, how intertwined the community is with the schools and the hospitals and the churches and everything like that. And I really appreciate how most folks are stepping up to help out and are willing to do what it takes. I think we've got some tough times ahead, and we'll band together and get through this. So
Appreciate your work and that of your colleagues as well. And of course, again, all of our school district, our from administrators down to our littlest students and everybody in between. I'm completely impressed with the flexibility and with the determination. Okay, we're on to the comments. Are there any other comments? Anyone wants to comment on events in the school district?
I do have a comment. Just looking forward to the possibility of us extending this hiatus. Have you looked at changes that you might make to our summer school program so that we can get some kids caught back up that may need it? So
Where we're most concerned about that is at the high school level. The exploratory programs offered K-8. We have more classes offered this year than I think we have in any other year, so we have lots of spots open for people. We will need to look at, depending on, I think a lot of that, Jim, depends on our plan should we get extended. We actually took a look today at the Wright City and Warrenton plan, and they have some interesting ideas in there to try and assist students to make sure that they don't lose a year of grade level or high school credits or something else. So what our summer school would have to look like probably would really depend on how we design the long-term learning should we be out for an extended amount of time. But at the high school, we have the flexibility that we can offer credit recovery in any of those items, fairly straightforward.
I'm more concerned about the learning that our beginners are not getting. So, for instance, kindergartner or preschool, they haven't been through the alphabet probably. So
Every one of those exploratory classes, especially at the elementary level, come with a core education instructional model, maybe hopefully with a theme that will draw kids into entering summer school. So that's already there, but you're right, it may need to be expanded into some other things. And depending on how long we're out, the community interest in kids attending summer school, I would think would increase as well, so.
they'll be ready to get rid of those.
We would have to consider possibly, we're kind of busting at the seams with a one elementary site in the middle school, and we've always had it kind of in our back pocket, the ability to expand to a second elementary, and that if we get to that, that may be something that we need to consider.
All right, I would appreciate it.
Adding to that, then, if we were to expand that program, would we also allow all the children in the school district, right now, unless, for busing and everything, would we consider expanding that as well?
At the discretion of the board, we can consider anything. It's just, what we would need to do to get people there.
That's a good point.
Currently, right now, the buses, as you know, only run within the city limits.
For summer
If we,
school.
for summer school. So if we want to expand beyond that, that's certainly a discussion we can have.
Something to think about. Jane, Shannon, Tony, anything further from you?
Thank you all for being there. I missed being there. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I want to point out our,
But your husband was.
I told him no. Just want to point out some dates to remember. Our next board meeting is April 2nd. We have in the packet Election Day, April 7th. Of course, that's been moved to June 2nd. Our second board meeting in April will be the 16th. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Thanks,
I'll
Brian.
second.
Thanks, Carla. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same.
Shannon?
What you want?
All right,
I was gonna say, as a staff
take care. All right.
junior high, to say that things weren't surreal, it would be an understatement, so. But I tell you, the vibes is not one of anxiety or concentrating more on spring break. I think our morale is pretty high, because everybody sees the incredible challenge we have. I think everybody appreciates the amount of communication that we've had so far. We trust our leader in our building, and the overarching thought was not really about us, but what can we do for our kids. So the other day when we packed Friday backpacks, and several of us junior hires went and delivered them out to some pretty rough areas, and those are the people that are going to really be hit the hardest. And so that made me realize that, one of our district goals is the community and school and community bridge. And, if there's any silver lining, this has given us a perfect opportunity to really go after that component. And I think it's gonna benefit us for years to come. So I appreciate everything you guys do. So our school trusts in your leadership, and just wanted to say that. Didn't really plan on coming tonight, but
What else you gotta do?
Yeah. Does any of us have to do?
I can give you something to do.
I'm sure you can.
Does he need something?
I'm sorry.
I don't know what this means.
We're done.
We're adjourned,
We're
right?
done. Adjourned.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I said we're adjourned.